You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to the Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I'm your host, Mo Murtadi, and today I have two friends with me. The first friend, you know him, you love him. He is our co-founder, Mr. Michael Ruffalo.
I am so excited to talk about this game.
Oh, so am I. And the other host that we have with us today is Andy Borkowski, the host and creator of VGS. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, folks. Excited to talk.
Absolutely. It's good to have you. You know, this is one of the games that I've been wanting to play. I think it's one that I picked originally, Mike, way back when, and it's finally being added on. Yeah, I've got some interesting, hopefully, takes on this one. Something I really like, Horizon Zero Dawn, the first game. There's been a couple remakes and additions added afterwards, but we're going to talk about the OG, the first one, the one that started it, the one that made Killzone become a little more friendly and bright. And so let's just get right into it. I think let's first meet our guest. So Andy, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you create, and how the folks can kind of learn about you.
Yeah, sure. I'll do this pitch. I want this job. I'll try and do good in this interview. Why I should be a part of your company? No. So it's really, first of all, exciting to be talking, have this Canadian podcast and talk about video games from the Canadian perspective. Like I feel like there's so much media out there in the game space, but to have something like this that's trying to, kind of create a curated experience, bring people back into that, and to have, the Canadian center, that stuff is really important to me. So thank you guys for, including me in this. Excited to talk. But yeah, I have a show. It's called VGS, or Video Game Sophistry. It started as a terrestrial radio show. So it was literally on AM 640 in Toronto, Sunday nights at 7 o'clock to 8 or 8:30. And it was there for about a year. I worked there as a news anchor for the better part of 8 years. And I convinced them on this very conservative talk radio show, which is not what I was at all, but for some reason I was working there. And I convinced them with, pretty pictures and numbers saying that, video games, there's this new thing. Let me talk about it. Right. And I adored doing that. It was something that I absolutely love to do. The access that you guys might speak to that when you're developing journalism that's centered around video games. Back then, 5 or 6 years ago, it was amazing the people you could talk to that wanted to be on the radio. And then eventually I just decided I enjoyed doing that so much more than actually being a news anchor and talking like this and explaining what's happening in Toronto. So instead, I moved over to YouTube, and
you're so good at that voice.
Oh, well, that, listen.
I'm just mesmerized right now.
I've been in the cauldron for a while, folks. I've been in the cauldron for a while. But it was really cool because then I was able to actually find, I think, some success on YouTube and other social media channels. So at last check, we're at 270,000 subscribers on the VGS YouTube channel and 30 million views, which is pretty cool. A lot of that,
unreal.
Yeah, it's neat. A lot of it is from me talking about the lore and the hidden stories found within video games that I just absolutely love to do. So something like this, your show is really, really up my alley. And considering before we started this, I had spent the better part of February beating Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel to Zero Dawn, I think that I got a unique perspective on this because my mind is just swimming in that Horizon, metaverse at this point. So I'm excited to get into it.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you. And right now, I think I'm going to pass it on to Mike to hit you with our Gauntlet. Now, it's essentially our way to kind of get to know you a little bit more. These questions are pretty...
Yeah, you did a great job giving us that pitch, but I think we really want to give the listeners a bit of a peek behind your opinions, not only of this game but of others. So I'm going to hit you with a couple of questions. Don't think too hard. Don't think too long. Just let it come up naturally.
Sure.
Does that sound good?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. Bagong! The gong is hit, and we're starting the gauntlet. Have you ever pretended to be sick to get out of something so you could play a game?
Yeah, most of the last year of high school, I didn't go so that I could beat every little thing that was in Skyrim. I had the strategy guide that I annotated with little, like Post-it notes on the side, like it was, like a Bible, because of all of the different little notes I added. So yeah, absolutely.
I love it. What is your earliest gaming memory?
Oh, so mine is Super Nintendo, Super Mario Brothers, playing with, and I think this is pretty common for a lot of people in this age demo, playing with my granddad and then my mom intermittently, and they were playing second player. And it's just like, I remember that being kind of a cool push to what video games could be at that age when I was, maybe 6 or 7.
That's amazing.
And
I
Mike,
love that you're able to have that memory with them.
And Mike, you have to now ask him. Is it a Luigi or is it a Mario game? What are we doing? What team are you on?
We've got this running thing. Let's see if you give the right answer. Are you? Who is the superior Mario brother? Is it Luigi Mario or Mario Mario?
I'm going to go with Mario, folks.
All right.
OG.
Let's just not tell Jacob about this.
Yeah.
He may see it. He may.
Next question. What game have you spent the most hours playing?
Ooh, so that's an interesting one. I am a huge proponent of all the big RPGs that you play 5 or 6 different times, every different way possible, hundreds of hours. But I actually recently took a look at my throughout Steam and saw the hours played. And my number one is, you won't perhaps believe it, Total War Warhammer 2. So I'm big into the strategy games. And it is like 1,200 hours. Like it is something just absurd.
That's a lot of hours.
Because I realize it kind of like people have this for like Civ or something like that. It's the games like that, the intense strategy games, are the ones I would go to have that, meditative sort of thing. People play, like COD or something like that. Like
Yes.
my hand-eye coordination is no good now. I'm too old for that. So now it is just playing these intense strategy games that gives me my zen.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Next one. What is your most controversial gaming opinion?
Okay. I think that the self-identification of a quote-unquote gamer is a horrible, toxic thing that is ruining this culture that I do enjoy a lot, and is ruining almost society as like a greater whole. I think there's even some responsibility to be had with the quote unquote gamer. Basically, if you identify yourself as a quote unquote gamer and there's certain cultural touchstones that go with that, I think that's kind of icky. That's not for me. I've seen the hatred that is associated with that, and I haven't seen the love. So yeah, I gotta say that.
I'm with you.
Cool.
I'm with you. Video games are amazing and gamers are gross.
There we go.
Okay, last one. What is your most favorite or memorable console generation?
That has got to be, and this is probably a common refrain, but the PlayStation 2 era. I still remember vividly convincing my parents to head over to Blockbuster and not buy, but rent the PlayStation 2 for like 2 weeks at a time. So me and my brother could try to beat as much of like, what is the driving game? Gran Turismo as we could, or as far as we could in Dynasty Wars, which was a really big one in that early era. And yeah, I got to say, I've had a lot of different jobs in my life at huge different corporations. Still, the best job for a corporation I ever had was when I worked at Blockbuster. So folks, gone too soon. Gotta say.
Lest we forget.
Amazing. Well, you survived the gauntlet. Thank you so much for giving us and our viewers a little peek behind the curtain.
Absolutely.
I will throw it back over to Mo. Mo,
Awesome.
Where do we go from here?
Let's just kind of break down the game. So the game we played was Horizon Zero Dawn, developed by Guerrilla Games. I actually had to do a little bit of back search because I didn't know who Guerrilla was. And when I looked into them, it seems like they were the people who created the Killzone series, and that was their only essentially big major title that kind of got their popularity going, which surprised me because of how dark it was. And it was published by Sony Interactive and available on PS4 and Microsoft Windows, so on your PC, released in 2017. The general high level, exactly what it is, but we usually like to do our little 1-sentence, 2-sentence fast pitch, so maybe I'll throw it to you guys. Well, what is Horizon Zero Dawn? What is the 1-sentence, 2-sentence summary?
In one sentence, Horizon Zero Dawn is a mashup between Assassin's Creed and Breath of the Wild.
So I would go with Horizon Zero Dawn is an attempt to fight off techno-nihilism with human frailty is what I want to go with there. Because I remember when this came out, one sentence. Why am I speaking? Please continue.
No, right on. I think mine would be even way more simple. I say it's Breath of the Wild if it went Super Saiyan. That's essentially my in a nutshell what the game is.
Okay.
With that being said, let's kind of talk about when the game came out. We do our time capsule segment where we kind of talk about the games that came out around the same time. So in 2017, there was banger after banger after banger. We had Nier Automata, Breath of the Wild, the major game that came out for Nintendo, Assassin's Creed Origins. I guess that's the not the most recent, but one of the more popular Assassin's Creed games. Middle-earth: Shadow of War, one of my personal favorites.
Classic.
And Destiny 2 also came out there. Did you guys play any of these games? Like, does anything come to mind when I mentioned those? Because those are pretty classic games that came out.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me that at the time, this game was being received fairly well, but being completely overshadowed by Breath of the Wild.
And have we seen that at all happen, maybe, with its counterpart?
It's a little poetic.
It's strange, right? Like, this is exactly what has happened, and I'm taking your thunder here, but that's exactly what happened with Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. It was a week later, Elden Ring came out, and has blown up the world. Even though I think Horizon Forbidden West did things in games that, like, I haven't seen in a real long time. Elden Ring's incredible too, but just it's exactly like Breath of the Wild coming out how many days afterwards? About 3 days after is in 2017 is absolutely wild, especially in 2017, considering both those games are kind of like you said, Mo, they're fighting for the same sort of players, I think, in a way, where Elden Ring, Forbidden West maybe aren't necessarily fighting for the same players, but the general culture, like, no one is talking about Forbidden West now, which is a bit of a shame.
You're spot on. And I kind of went like an inverted style, because when Breath of the Wild came out, I didn't have a Switch. That wasn't a game I was like wanting to play, but I did have a PS4. And once I picked up Horizon Zero Dawn, I said, why do I need to play Breath of the Wild? You have a way more incredible weapon system. The mechs were just blowing me away. I grew up with like Kinects and like Legos and machines were just all in my brain. So it almost seemed to me like, oh, it's more realistic. It seems way more vast or whatever it was. Meanwhile, I haven't played Breath of the Wild at the time. It was just my perception. I thought of it as like, oh, it's just a Nintendo kids game. I don't need to play as Zelda. So I was all in. Before even the Forbidden West came in, it was like, I'm going to play it first. But as soon as I heard about Elden Ring, I waited. I haven't played Forbidden West. I put my money down for Elden Ring, and I'm enjoying it right now. And I really want to go to Forbidden West, but it's the same. Like you said, it came out the exact same time. I can't justify the two right away. So that's where my head's at. Originally went for it. Now I've kicked it to the side. However, I can't wait to try Forbidden West.
I also remember this game coming out and looking absolutely amazing. Like, for its time, place, and moment. This game was an absolute stunner, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise, knowing that the Killzone games looked really, really good. Really pushed the PS3 to the limits of what it was able to do. And I don't know if you remember back in the day, they had released a target render of what the Killzone game, I forget which one, would look like. And by the time they shipped, it actually didn't look that far off. I mean, it didn't look as good, but it didn't look that far off. And Guerrilla clearly has a track record of pushing up very stylistic and beautiful graphics. And yeah, I remember looking at this game when it came out like, wow, okay, you know what, I got to give it to the Sony guys. This does look really, really good.
Totally. And even like the reviews of the time, like you can see like all the websites, all the review people all said similar things. Like we have PC Gamer's review. They gave it an 86 score, and they said it's the classy sandbox that stands out from the pack thanks to its brilliant battles against an array of fantastic beasts. They're touching on the different mechs, the different open world like enemies you're facing, but every single review kind of mentions it's a beautiful open world. There are some minor flaws if you want to kind of pick at it, but the overwhelming majority of reviewers are saying this is the game to play, and still it was overshadowed with all the other games. So how did you guys play it? I had it on my PS5 and my PS4 because I've played it twice. So that's kind of what I always played it on the console. Did you guys do the same, or were you guys on PC?
So I played it on PC. I did something out of character for me. As soon as it launched on the Epic Game Store, I was like, oh, this actually looks good, and it's during a holiday sale. So I will purchase this. I purchased it at close to full price, which is not something I usually do. I'm more than happy to wait for games to be pretty seriously discounted. And yeah, played through it on my PC, got the Frozen Wilds expansion. So my experience of playing the game is not the base vanilla version. It is with the Frozen Wilds expansion, and I'm not 100% sure of the ways that this changes things. I know it adds some, I think, parts of the map and some quests that you can go do, but it also adds another part of the skill tree and a couple of other things that I'm sure I experienced, but wouldn't quite know how to pull apart. So yeah, a really, really interesting experience playing it that way.
Yeah, I jumped in, of course, when it first came out. I had a review code for this game in 2017. So I was able to play this. For those of you that don't know, Sony Canada is very supportive of different journalists and creators, and they really try to push the Canadian arm here is phenomenal. So I was able to get it maybe a month beforehand. So I remember just diving in ways that I did not expect. But for this show, I did, and I'm making some videos on Forbidden West and the general lore. So I did play it again on PS5, and it is really interesting to go from Forbidden West to Horizon Zero Dawn, from sequel to the prequel of it. But yeah, if I could recall, I do think there was something a little more slick about playing it on PS5. But again, it's been so many years that it's hard to put that all together.
Yeah, and it seems like it's kind of locked into like the PlayStation ecosystem, because we get it for free on I think it's PS Now or PS Plus, one of the subscriptions. You're able to play it if you have a PlayStation and the subscription, of course. So Mike, you're not even involved in the PlayStation world anymore. You're kind of detached completely. So that's why I'm surprised to hear that you bought it like on PC. I'm like, wow, that's a meta Sony title, and you're giving the money to the bad guy. What brought you to that? Like, what was it, the podcast recording, or was it a game you're interested in?
No, I was actually way more interested in it before I think we ever got to sit down and figure out what games we were going to play for the year. And yeah, it just always looked like a great game. I've got nothing against Sony. I just find in a lot of cases my Xbox fits my needs a little bit better. But yeah, if they're going to put some great Sony games like they have with Horizon Zero Dawn and now God of War on the PC, I will purchase those and I will play those. I might just wait till they get a little bit cheaper, but absolutely, I'm more than happy to and really excited to have done it. Awesome. Mo, how did you play this?
Oh, I played it on the PlayStation. I kind of locked into the world. Yeah, I have it on PlayStation 5. Originally played it on PS4. And then once I got the PS5, booted it right up because I wanted to see it in crispy detail this time. Even though I don't think it was much of a difference. I might have had a newer TV or something. So yeah, enjoyed it on the PlayStation. Worked like a charm. Loved the bow and arrow. So let's set the scene. So essentially, where do we go? What is Horizon Zero Dawn? I'll take a crack at starting it off, and maybe if I miss anything,
just try to build on it
for sure. So you start off playing as a character named Aloy. Aloy is a little toddler in the beginning of the game, and it almost seems like she's called an outcast, essentially someone thrown away from the community. It looks like almost like a primal, like ancestral community where everyone's primitive. That's the word. Where you see like everyone's kind of playing a survival game. Initially, what you do, you find yourself traveling around. You stumble into like some old cave where you start seeing some high tech, almost underground Batman cave, and you start stumbling around saying, hey, like I don't know what this is. And what you've come to find out is there's this huge storyline of a character discovering all this technology with all these mechs moving around. It's almost like it's a primitive community just copied and pasted into the Transformers world, if that's a better way to explain it.
The Dinobots.
Yeah, the Dinobots, essentially, because you just see a bunch of different wildlife. So you're thrown in this kind of confused, like, what's going on? Essentially, what happens is this character has a coming-of-age, almost little mini storyline initially where you learn the mechanics, and you learn that it's this warrior tribe that you're trying to become part of again, but everyone in the tribe is considering you an outcast and doesn't want anything to do with you. So it's like that almost like, what's the word? It's the story of like trying to fit in, the story of trying to like be accepted by your community, but also the coming of age story, but also like you are like regardless if they want you or not, you are a strong character and you will kind of prevail, and that's your primary goal, is to be accepted, but also to succeed in life, essentially.
A hero's journey.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a couple threads of being part of a community, some threads about growing up and understanding your responsibilities beyond yourself. But yeah, they really do start off the game in a really strong way with you know, the light training of how you play, but also setting up a lot of mysteries that then unfold throughout the game. The moment where, and I'm blanking on the ceremony, maybe you know the name of it, Andy, where your guardian brings you and has one of the older ladies, the matriarchs of the village, shout out your name into the mountains, into All Mother. I thought that was such a great moment. There was so much mystery wrapped up in it, and yeah, it came across really, really cool.
I will say, and I think we didn't touch on this, and we should have, that at that moment in 2017, Mo, you mentioned Assassin's Creed Origins, which, as I recall, if I am recalling correctly, was the game that had... Oh no, that's the incorrect game. So I think it was. I think this game was kind of revolutionary because at the time we got to have a very strong female lead that couldn't be changed to a man, which was often and still is very much the common trope. It was like, hey, we've built the game almost twice with this other character because we refuse to just make you play as a woman because we're terrified of gamers. So I think that very early on, the choice to make Aloy not be sexualized whatsoever, that she's not a romantic character, she's very much a Samus, if you will, if you're grabbing from the genre. She's not a Lara Croft, she's not a Tomb Raider, she's totally. You know, she's a badass soldier, but is still clearly feminine, and this is still a daughter and mother's journey. I think was really important for that time and made it really stand out. The thing that you're all touching on that I think we kind of extends what I'm saying here was this concept that in this society, in this world, that the Nora tribe so fetishized the idea of motherhood. You know, their matriarchs were the people that were grandmothers and great grandmothers. They were the ones that guided their society. The question of the game was, how would you react or deal with the fact that you have no mother in a society where motherhood is the defining factor of your culture? And right off the bat, you know,
great summation.
Well, you can't be more of an outcast than that. You can't be more broken and the other than this. And I think that was a really interesting place to begin the story, because then it also allows the players to experience this established world sort of from an outcast eyes, because everything is different from our experience. Like you said, Mo, it is kind of primitive tribes, but there's also almost medieval level tribes that you find later in the game. But in that world, there is such a rich narrative and world building structure. Guerrilla made a really smart choice of making us an outsider And then eventually, as you travel to these other locations, you get to experience the game through Aloy's eyes and also through the players. So it was never almost condescending when they said, like, oh, how does this work? Like, it fit with the meta narrative in a really creative and interesting way. And I remember I was absolutely blown away. But I don't know if y'all remember this. The first few conversations were also a little demoralizing because there was such glitches when it came to the lip movement and the eye movement not matching up with dialogue. I remember that was a real kick in the balls when it came to like, wow, this is written so well, it's acted so well, but we're just not quite there. And it got better as the game progressed. I remember this very vividly, but it was such a shame that at the very beginning, Aloy's mouth would be moving, but she wouldn't be speaking. Her eyes would be cross-eyed and looking in certain scenes because it's so photorealistic. It is the real mocap that they did. But if we played it again, and after playing Forbidden West, man, it really stands out. The beginning, especially, of just not really working.
That's such a good point because this game looks so good and gets close to that uncanny valley. Mm-hmm. That when it goes wrong, it is really jarring.
Yeah.
There are a lot of moments in the Elder Scrolls games where things don't line up as smoothly as you'd like, or an NPC does something that looks a little bit wonky, but it doesn't bother you nearly as much because it's never quite passable. Mm-hmm. But because this is such a photorealistic view of these characters, it is really jarring. I didn't have that experience early in the game. I was actually really impressed throughout. I had it later, specifically with Silence, where it had that moment where the mesh on the face clearly reset and his head twitched a bit and then went back to whatever emotion he was supposed to be having in that moment. And that was the moment where I really got pulled out and it became clear, like, okay, yes, this is still a game. A lot of this is scripted and pulled together. There's a lot of magic happening behind the scenes. I think it's also worth noting, just for the listener, that we will be spoiling everything at this. Expect no stone left unturned, and if it is left unturned, be pleasantly surprised when you ultimately do get there yourself.
Yeah, no. So it's a great intro essentially. That it's the story itself. Like I said, when you have that coming of age, you become that Nora warrior, the one that's finally accepted because you participate in an annual event where I guess amateurs or the fellow children of the community are trying to compete to become a brave, a soldier for the Nora tribe. The winner of this contest essentially, which is an obstacle course survival / obstacle course, gets any wish fulfilled to them. And you as Aloy are looking at this as an opportunity to finally be a part of the community, become a part of the tribe, and this is your way to enter it. So fast forward, essentially.
Kind of, because I'd only just tweak that. She doesn't even seem like she really wants to be part of the tribe in a lot of ways. She's only doing it because everyone else has kind of pushed her to it.
That's not how I remember early on that she was like, it was the only thing that mattered to her. In terms of her guardian, Ross is his name, that she would do, that was almost her entire childhood was predicated on this idea of training for the event called The Proving, I believe.
Yes.
So I remember that being at the very beginning, kind of the tutorial intro of the game, and that first area before The Proving being her one defining factor. I did want to ask you guys quickly, because these sandbox games are fascinating for the different ways that people can play. So I am one that will be deeply upset if I miss a data point, if I miss one collectible. I will obsess over it for days and days at a time. So for me, I remember not leaving the Nora area. Like they say, average playtime, if you finish everything, was 55 hours for this game. Easily 20 hours, and I was not out of the intro area trying to get everything. So I'd like, that's how I recall playing. I was also doing it. It's a little different if you're doing it for YouTube video content. Like it's important that you every stone is unturned, but not unturned rather. Yeah. So what about you guys? How'd you play?
I will tell you this. I completed the game in 32 hours with 49.9% completion. So I definitely did do side quests. And I think I spent more time than I maybe needed to in the Nora domain or in the Sacred Land. I'm blanking exactly on
that's
what
that's it.
Mother's Heart, something around there. But yeah, definitely did not, go through everything. I think there was a point where I was trying to level up to just make sure that I was a little bit more overpowered when I went to other regions. And I realized that was not the way to do it. So beeline the story at a certain point.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like 50-50. Whenever I play these like open world RPGs, I kind of first build resources or build capacity to carry things. That's like my main thing I focus on. If there's like a way to like level that up, that's my priority.
So you hunted a lot of owls then, eh? And rabbits.
Anything that moved near me that created something was going down. There was no way.
I don't think I killed a single owl.
Oh man, that was tedious in that game, man. I have to say, I
don't think I killed a single owl. I killed so many of the little hogs or pigs or
foxes
whatever that are running around. I killed a bunch of turkeys. I killed some raccoons and foxes, but I didn't see a single owl, or at least I had never killed any.
I might be confusing Forbidden West, but I do remember killing a whole ton of critters.
Yeah, it's kind of like the name of the game. So because you have weapons, you're playing almost like an archer main protagonist, and is able to collect resources throughout the map, whether it's sticks, whether it's animals, whether it's hide or materials. I essentially just always collect as much as I can. That way when I get into a fight, I never run out, because that's my like anxiety attack level 1000. If I'm in a big boss fight and I have no more arrows, I'm like, okay, yeah, restart. Let's redo this. That's kind of how I do it. No perfectionist, but I get what I need.
This game, from what I see, grabbed so much from Far Cry.
Yes.
Grabbed how to upgrade your craft new wallets, new pouches, all of that stuff. How to craft your medicine, how to craft your weapons. It felt like so much of this was lifted from Far Cry, which is, when I had given you my one sentence pitch, I had used Assassin's Creed because I think it was a little bit more direct in terms of influence on opening up a big world and revealing the fog. But yes, that element feels like it was lifted right out of Far Cry. Very Ubi influence, it felt like to me. And Mo, just like you, I also play that same way, where I want to gather as many resources as I can, make sure I'm just stocked to the gills, make sure I have as much of the capacity upgraded as possible. So for me, that was, I was grabbing every single twig, flower, and stem that I could along the way. There was nothing I wasn't stopping for until I was full.
Right on. So what is the storyline? What is the absolute goal? Why is Aloy becoming a Nora Brave or joining the community? I think that the way they kind of explain it is you're essentially trying to discover your origin, and also this little earpiece that you get. So something we jumped ahead on was in the beginning, when you're that little toddler to kind of learn the mechanics and the gameplay, you discover almost like an earpiece that kind of becomes Google Glass, if that's a good way to explain it.
It's called a focus in the game.
The focus. And that's the core main mechanic functionality thing that's introduced super early. And it's, if anyone's played any of the Batman Arkham Asylum games, you have that scan where a bunch of things are highlighted.
I love games like that,
powerful.
Man. I love having the scan. I don't know why. Again, I'm playing Elden Ring, and I went from Forbidden West. I hated that I couldn't just press down on the joystick and get that scan. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a liminal.
In you.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's that liminal lizard brain thing. But I love walking into an area, pressing that button, and going, "Oh, I know where all the little daisies are. I know, where the path is." I don't know what it is, but Yeah, Mo, if you want, I can jump into the lore of this game and take us through the story, just because I remember I spent so much time analyzing all of this. So
you did a great job setting it up. Please take us.
So
take us to
from that moment where Aloy is taking part in the proving to join this Nora tribe, the one thing she always wanted to do, she never had a mother. She was an outcast because of it. In that final moment, there's a mysterious attack from this foreign figure that we haven't seen before, and it looks like he's about to kill Aloy. In that final moment, her guardian, the person that was never really warm to her, but was able to bring her to this point of getting the one thing she wanted, bringing her full dreams, Rost sacrifices himself to save Aloy. And it's a huge loss. She never had a mother, and now the closest thing to a father is gone. But it also sets her on her journey to follow another tribe called the Oseram. There's a member that was coming to this proving that also had a focus. And this is not something people have in this world. It's just, it doesn't exist. They don't see technology in that vein, despite the fact that there are literally robot monsters around every corner, and they use the robot pieces, but they don't have access to the old world technology. It's a bit of a spoiler there, but we're going to spill in anything anyway. So Aloy continues that journey. She goes from there to different realms within this world. The Karja. She then meets the most major clan in the region called the Karja, who are kind of like an Egyptian medieval style tribe that worships the sun and believes in the divinity of the sun. They're much more technologically advanced than the Nora, and they have a big stranglehold on the region. So eventually Aloy goes throughout the world. She also discovers the Oseram tribes, who are basically like dwarves, but not dwarves, that love beer.
That's a perfect explanation.
It's exactly what it is, right? They just build machines, and they're not dwarves, quote unquote, but they build machines and love beer.
They're full-size dwarves.
Yeah, and they're big and chonky and substantial. So there's them, and then there's the Banuk tribe that believes in the religious interaction with these machines, whereas most other people just attack these machines for, the parts that are within. And throughout her journey, she gets embroiled in all the politics. There's a lot of minutia, but she discovers an individual that I believe one of you referred to already, Silence, who was another character that knew a lot about this old world, that had access to a focus as well. And all of a sudden, the story really changes, and Aloy begins to understand for the very first time that the old ones, quote unquote, were us. That it is a reflection of our society, that due to the actions of some absolutely heinous ultra capitalists, yes, essentially, his name was Ted Faro, and he created these robot swarms that were supposed to be fully automated, that were required to just ensure our society worked.
Peacekeeping devices.
Yeah, but even that, they were supposed to take the guesswork out of war, which, if anyone could consider, maybe war shouldn't be automated, is the most obvious thing. And these machines also, very Matrix-esque, relied on the consumption of carbon. So you didn't have to charge them. So they just eat the stuff around them. Wouldn't you know it, there's a glitch in the system. And these robots decided who are the real enemies, humans, and they began destroying the world. Aloy discovers that there was an effort to stop this coming apocalypse. The smartest people in their society recognize, oh, wait, this is the end of the world. We did the math. This is over. And there was a woman named Elizabeth Sobek, who was this genius inventor and biologist that created the Zero Dawn campaign or project. And the idea was that she would get the smartest people in the world and develop very advanced AI that would be here for when we all died. When humanity had died out and we've been destroyed by the machines, we wouldn't have a chance to live, but humanity wouldn't be finally extinguished. So she was able to create terraforming processes to make sure the world came back together. They were able to break the glitch that was with all these robots to stop that. And they had another subsystem called Hephaestus. I can keep going forever, and I might, if that's cool, guys.
Keep going. Yeah. Please
so
keep going.
There was a subset called Hephaestus that would recreate the machines needed to help terraform and re-terraform this planet. They also included something called Hades. They all had these mythical names. And Hades was designed...
They were all Greek gods.
All Greek gods, yeah. Go ahead, Mo.
And yeah, that's one thing. Some of the ones that they created was Apollo. Apollo was the one that was meant to encapsulate all of the knowledge, all of the development of all of humanity, and that was going to create that. And Gaia was the AI that you're referring to, the one that's going to rebuild and terraform Earth, all mother essentially. And I think, I'm not sure if you're going to get into it, but the main antagonist is Hades, who is essentially that counterbalance. In case Gaia, something goes wrong with that, there's an immediate delete functionality, which is the other one, Hades. But yeah, continue. You're doing
that's exactly it. Because if you really think about it, even with our own planet, and I guess this is our planet, in the developments of our evolutionary process of having life on this Earth, there was a lot of start stops. We had ice ages, we had mass extinctions. So if the terraforming process was not leading to a moment where everything aligned, Hades would make sure that everything restarted and the planet was destroyed so they can begin again. Aloy and Sylens discover that several years ago, a mysterious signal of some capacity has activated these AIs that were doing what they were supposed to do in the most case, and were re-terraforming the planet. They discovered that this mysterious signal had created actual consciousness within these AIs, which is not what they're supposed to be. Most of them are subfunctions, like they don't work that way. And Hades decided, well, now it's time to destroy the planet again. So this begins the real crisis of Sylens and Aloy trying to figure out how Hades is doing this to stop him, and also Aloy's super objective to try to figure out who she is, because she always had something to do with this terraforming process. There's always something a little bit special about her that was kind of uncommon from other people.
Yeah, and it almost seems throughout the whole, I'd say more than halfway through the game, you don't know what's going on. You're essentially just trying to discover yourself. You kind of understand there's a bad AI or something's controlling the machines. Sylens is keeping you in the dark. Everyone's not being direct, but you still have that mission that you're going to find out what's going on, and that kind of keeps you going. So as you're exploring the world, doing whatever you need to do, there's still that underlying mysteriousness of what is Hades, who is this lady that looks just like potentially your mom, because that was my guess initially. I'm not sure if it was anyone else. But when I was playing as Aloy, when I saw the hologram of the doctor, the name...
Elizabeth Sobek. Not Elizabeth, but Elizabeth, which is so annoying for doing videos, man. I cannot tell you. I called her Liz for most of my content, man, because I just could not do it. So we're going to call her Liz. She's Liz right now.
Yeah, let's do it. Liz Sobek.
I thought Liz was mom. I was like, oh my gosh, because it kind of looked similar. And I was kind of hoping it wouldn't be, because that would have been so easy. This hologram kind of guiding, shining the light, and you're always looking for your mother or who your mother is. It's kind of like that mystery never gets completely solved until you're almost right at the end.
Yeah, the game does that just absolutely superbly, because all of this lore that I'm talking about is slowly found out in a trickle as Aloy and Sylens go to these old world ruins, and you discover little bits and pieces. The rest of the world is not aware of this. They don't have this focus technology. They just assume these old ones died out. They're not complete fools. They see that there's still, remnants of skyscrapers from 1,000 years ago. So they know a society existed. But I think Horizon Zero Dawn did a really great job of having that mystery still be present, but not telling it to you like I am right now, because it is a little bit goofy when I just say it here. It is sci-fi goofiness, but when you're discovering it really does contextualize the character in ways that a lot of other games don't.
they do a great job of drip feeding it to you, because if you got it all in one go, like I think you're doing now, you're like, man, this game's dumb and goofy as hell. But because there are real moments where I was like, I can't tell if this is brilliant or if this is extremely dumb. And I kind of just ended up at the end of it saying, like, I like this enough that I don't care if it's really dumb. Like there are moments where, you know, people say fire and you're like, how would they know that fire is supposed to be like shoot your weapon, like a remnant from firing the gunpowder, you know, that they never actually ever experienced in the development of. So there's all these like weird, wonky, dumb things, but on the whole, especially when they drip feed it to you, you're like, oh, this is so good. There's all of these little bits that are coming together and painting a richer, more colorful picture of what's happened in this world.
Yeah, and I think that is, you know, this is not the only story that's happening, too. There's also the primary narrative of, you know, what the Karja tribe has done. They were this horrible tribe that did atrocities and sacrificed in the blood rituals so many other tribe people in modern day Horizon Zero Dawn, and now they're trying to atone for it and kind of have a peaceful society. But the machines are becoming much more deadly, and that has everything to do with what's happening to Hades. So every time you learn something, it's also not as if like the rest of the world just figures it out too. Like it's funny that in this game, Aloy and Silence are pretty much the only people that know what has gone on in the history of the world. Like it's not a shared truth, which I think also adds a real interesting kind of great man quality to Aloy that a lot of games need. She doesn't have superpowers, you know, she's not necessarily stronger or smarter or faster than anyone else. Why are we playing her? What makes her the protagonist? Well, she has the ability to use a focus and see things that no other human being can, and she knows hidden histories about the universe that other people don't. So, yeah, I could, you know, very quickly finish her off if y'all want, just with the main narrative.
Please do.
Yeah. So at that point, everything kind of coalesces into one moment. There's this big attack, and it's at that moment that everyone comes together from different tribes. It's very wonderful. I love games like that where you go to a different area and, you know, that Banuk person will be your person for that area. So you understand the area and the culture of it based on your interactions with that NPC. It's classic storytelling. It's the stuff I used to love in like the original Fallout games. Like I really adore that. And wouldn't you know it, in the final battle, they all come together and they stop this threat. It's at that moment, or a little bit before that moment, it kind of sets the stage, where we discover the biggest hidden truth about this world and Aloy herself. That Aloy is in fact a clone of Liz Sobet that Gaia sent out into the world after she realized that, you know, that Gaia was getting killed by Hades. And she just thought, you know what, this is a gamble. But if Liz was such a special, amazing person that she was able to create Zero Dawn and save humanity, maybe Aloy could too. And I remember a moment when that was revealed that Ashley Birch, who plays Aloy and does a phenomenal job, really captured something that I don't think other video game protagonists do. And even in Forbidden West, I didn't see this moment. When the rest of the world is being destroyed, when, you know, everyone should care about the big monsters that are attacking Meridian and everyone's going to die, all that Aloy cares about is the fact that she is a clone and she wants to find the grave of her quote unquote mother. And that almost selfishness and like obsession in the face of real tragedy is how human beings react. Human beings do not jump headfirst into tragedy with their chest puffed out and a sword and shield in one hand and say, "Avat thee." No, they think about the people they love and why they did this. Aloy started this whole journey because she wanted to feel like she belongs. And this is the last piece. So I really got to count the developers on making those moments really do stick out in some incredible ways. And just to finish off the narrative real quick, there was that moment when you beat the game and everyone's happy. Oh no, that mysterious signal goes to Silen's lantern and he runs off. Ha ha ha, what am I going to do with this? So setting up the inevitable sequel.
I hated that moment at the end. I thought it was the most magical wonky BS of this red signal just shooting through the air like it was like a physical manifestation after you had just jammed an override deep down within it and it had effectively should have killed it as far as we know. Which also, like, if we take a step back, like, as much as I love the story and love how well it was written, I think there's like a really dumb, wonky bit where it's like the way that you kill this AI software piece of, is by physically jamming an orb inside of it. Which, I've got other things to.
Isn't that how you fix? You never fixed your PC that way?
That's how I fix all of my computers and all my consoles. I just jam a rod in there while it's plugged in and hope that I don't electrocute myself along the way. But I have to bring this up because you mentioned Ashley Birch. I have been a longtime fan. Like I watched a ton of Hey Ash, What You Playin'?
Yeah.
I've been there for a long time, but it was so tough for me to play this game and hear her because I had also been playing Life is Strange at the same time and hearing a lot of Chloe. And it just felt like so much of the same. It felt like so much of the same snarky, quirky in the same voice.
Yeah.
And it really made me wish we had more diversity in voice actors or voice actresses to just get more different voices out there. Because I do think she does a great job, but I think the fact that the character is similar in a lot of ways to other characters she's played really pulled me out of it a bit.
It's not like Nolan North does the same voice for every generic white dude that exists though here, bro. Like, come on.
Absolutely. No, hey, look, and that's why I feel weird saying it, but I do. It also does bother me.
Yeah,
when it's
if it bothers you, it bothers you.
Nolan North,
Yeah.
I just want more people doing good voices in video games.
Totally. Mike, you mentioned the final Hades fight, like when you're stabbing it physically to destroy it. I had the little like Jacob McCourt in my ear saying like he's a big proponent of boss battles are trash now. There's no such thing as a good boss battle, and this kind of made that point too, because you're building all this up. You're finally fighting Hades. There's essentially the robot that you're fighting that's fighting for him. But yeah, at the very end of it is definitely not as satisfying. But I had such a blast playing that game. The little magical Hades flying away, jumping into the lantern, as corny as it was, that got me excited. I'm like, hey, there's definitely going to be a sequel. And I had so much fun playing it. That kind of gave me that like thumbs up. Yes, we're going to have something coming in the future. And it's going to be fantastic, even if they just hit the bar that they've already set.
I will also say I love the fact that they, not to say, yeah, like I love the fact that they built Silence as the character that he is. I was struggling to figure out how to say that because he is just purely a scientist. Like he is purely someone who wants knowledge for the sake of knowledge, and he's willing to do just about anything to get it. And I think that they played that in such a great way because there was almost no judgment in it. It was, I will own up for all the mistakes that I've made, but this is a pure ideal, which seems so foreign to that culture. It's really interesting to see him be to essentially have a rationalist or enlightenist perspective in a world that is techno-primitivist at best.
He's perhaps an outcast, would you say?
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you guys, I remember back to 2017. Had you ever played a game like this where, and we haven't really talked about gameplay, and I've been monopolizing so much of this, so I do appreciate you guys letting me. No,
we appreciate you carrying us through.
Listen, just relax, put your feet up. I'll just talk by myself here. But I remember the sliding mechanics that slow down time with your focus, and then as you're sliding about, trying to snipe off select pieces of these massive machines so you can get those really tiny little weak points and then maybe throwing down some traps. There's one game that I kind of remember, and this might be a weird stretch, but I remember when I played BioShock 2, I really loved setting up like the dozens and dozens of traps around. But yeah, for you guys, having the fluidity of movement with that was kind of new. Like I didn't really remember an experience, that is analogous to that.
There's a running theme with me, Jacob, and Mike, and there's a game I absolutely love, and I was hoping you would say it was like it. Fingers were crossed, but Far Cry Primal. So the mechanics very similar. One of the reasons why I compare it to the two is one thing I used a lot in Horizon was the override functionality. I leveled that up first. That was just like you, Andy. I'm a huge strategy game player, so I love seeing the situation and kind of mapping out like, okay, how are we gonna like destroy everything in like the easiest path possible or whatever it might be. So using the focus and kind of one thing we haven't touched on is there's a lot of like mechanics in the game when you're fighting. One of which each enemy is like following a path that you can kind of see with your focus so you can prepare your fights. So like that's the one game I can definitely compare the two, because in Far Cry Primal you can have an animal companion coming in to like fight an individual. You get to camps where there's multiple people and you have to decide, okay, take the like the announcer guy, the person who like blows the horn, that person has to go first or else reinforcements are coming. That mechanic I definitely connected with Far Cry Primal, and because I love that, Horizon Zero Dawn was an easy like for me.
Mo's been trying to get us to play that game for a long time.
One day.
I love that game. Far Cry Primal is phenomenal. I'll talk about it right now. We're going to derail it once more. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to go to Ubisoft Toronto when that was coming out, and I interviewed the guys that there's a whole team that made the language and like actually referenced the Paleolithic I guess not influences, but real text that led to this language. And Mo, you're going to be so jealous. I then put on the suit, the mocap suit, and did a little scene. You can actually see it's an old video from so many years ago, but it's actually on VGS right now if you do want to check it out. Because anyways, that's a phenomenal game. Continue.
Yeah, no, it's just the one game I definitely compare the two with.
What I would say is I think you make a really good point that this game brings all of these mechanics together in a really clean combo. I feel like it wasn't novel for me in that way, but it did feel like it was very polished, that it all worked together very, very well. And I didn't really get frustrated with any one of them. You know, I enjoyed sliding around. I enjoyed hiding in the bush. I enjoyed the Matrix time, the slowdown. Every bit of it, I thought, played together really, really well to create really satisfying combat. And because so much of the game is combat, whether you're fighting a giant, techno T-Rex or a little, velociraptor or, antelope or whatever it ends up being, you're always in some type of combat, and it comes together really, really smoothly, really, really well.
Is there any mechs or machines that kind of you vividly remember, like, holy smokes, this is sweet, or ones you hated or really didn't want to be in the next like mandatory fight?
So I have to go here. I was super impressed by the Sabretooth. Because that was the first time I was like, oh, they got big. I knew there was a big T-Rex in there, but I didn't realize how much they had filled out the in-between. But the moment where I was just like, oh, I love this, is when you face, and I'm blanking on their official name, but it's basically a rhino. It's basically a rhino that's gigantic, and it's what I would assume, it's on the same, difficulty level or tier, I think, as the T-Rex is. And when I had to go take one down, it was in a group of 2 or 3. So it felt that much more challenging, and taking one of those down just felt absolutely amazing. It was like a moment I will not forget. What about you guys? What stood out to you?
Well, I think that the easiest one, and the game does prepare you for it, is when you see a Thunderjaw for the first time. So that is the biggest, creature in that game. The game wants you to know, like, okay, before this point, you have probably been able to, muscle your way through most of the other robots that you fought. This one, you actually have to like care about certain mechanics. So I remember that the first time you fight a Thunderjaw versus like one of the last times where you're so set up, like you can throw down, you don't even need to do traps. You know the fight is what I think a lot of people love from any sort of video game, is the idea that now you've learned and you've mastered it. I do remember my most hated one. I want to make sure I'm not equating the two games. So I have the wiki out right now to make sure that it's not in Forbidden West. Yes. Okay. So long legs are also in Zero Dawn. Yeah. And those damn ostriches were what I loathed, because you would work so hard to set up little traps, or you want to go stealthy or set something up, and their whole move set was just leaping at you 15 times in a row, like a little bit broken in my opinion, really. But that, and I think maybe a rock breaker was a little bit annoying, but pretty cool of the different monsters you could find.
No, totally. I think those ostriches like shot like an audio blast as well. So they had speed. They could surprise you. You had to be moving. Yeah. I think it's every machine is able to be taken down. One of the things, like with the focus, the best mechanic I think is if you've fought them before or you've used a weapon that's effective, you remember it. So like it'll show you, hey, this person has a soft gas, like maybe like a gas tank underneath the belly, and it'll be highlighted like this is super effective with the fire arrow or with ice or whatever it might be. For me though, it was the rock breakers that I loved, but I also was terrified of, and those were the ones I've ran away from the most, because it was just they dove underground, so you almost like never knew where they were coming, and unless I needed to go like a certain path, I didn't engage with those. Whatsoever.
What I loved is how full they made the ecosystem of these robotic animals, because every biome that you went to had different ones. There were I'm blanking on the name, but they were stealthed. They were basically like jaguars. Stalkers. Yes. There were thunder maws, which were basically huge alligators that were both in water and out. And you just knew, like, alligators have been around for hundreds of millions of years. That if a computer figured out a way to make a better version of an alligator, you're in real trouble. And so, I loved the way that they fleshed out the whole world with all kinds of diversity of these animal types. I'm actually, in retrospect, kind of surprised there weren't more alligator variants, considering it's such an efficient form of animal.
I do know that it was like one of the most annoying things about this game when it was first released was that a lot of the marketing material showed these amazing animals, these robots, and your ability to override them, meaning in many cases that maybe you'd be able to ride them. When I believe in Zero Dawn, the only ones you can ride are one completely useless, just horse animal. And everyone in the first game just wanted to ride like a Stormbird. Like, I even think that was in some of the advertising material, that you could do that. And the fact that you couldn't, I feel like, was a big misstep. And, very, very light spoilers for Forbidden West. The lightest, they do make changes so you can do more of that in the sequel. But I still, like, it's such a travesty, because you build these incredible living creatures. You have the ability to override them. They're already doing that. Like, I really think it's almost a necessity that you can ride and interact with almost every single one. Like, I think that was a big misstep for this game at the time. And even still, maybe it's more difficult than I'm giving credit for. But I think it's pretty essential.
Yeah, I think it was only like the steed-looking animals, because there was a couple like different types. There was like a longhorn with like the wide Texas longhorns. There was like one that looked like a ram, and then there was some without horns. But one of the things I also liked was all the different like machines had their own like not emotions, but they all felt different. Like, some of them were more skittish, some of them would like come investigate you a little bit more, and some, if they saw you, they're coming for like they're gonna show you like the two-piece combo, like the 1-2, like.
And they yelled in that robot way too. Like, I 100% know what you mean. There was personality in them, from how they interacted to when you started attacking them. And the audio design in this game really is so phenomenal. Like it's so, maybe we take it for granted a little bit, but how often do we get new IPs that are not just a retread of any sort of fantasy story? Like, even if it's a new IP, it's like, wait a second, it's Nolan North again. But this had a unique premise, unique characters, an interesting mystery, and is setting up absolute sequels, even possible trilogies of game franchises like that. I'm trying to think of new games that have done that in the last 3 years, and I'm kind of blanking a little. I'm sure people will explain how wrong I am, and I would listen to that wholeheartedly. But I think that this game did that in ways that I did not expect. And it's a great legacy. Like, if you haven't played Forbidden West, it really does build on this in interesting ways. So this was honestly a real pleasure to play. This is kind of my final thoughts on it a little bit. It was a pleasure to play. There were some of the technical issues that did take me out of it, but at the time, the dueling narratives and Aloy's introspection of both of that, with combat systems that worked, with a world that was fascinating in the history of it, the world building, and even the current day. Like, I got deep into the tribal lores and their religious symbols and stuff. Like, I love that stuff. And you don't see a lot of games that do that. So I think it's a real hidden gem. If it's free on the PlayStation Now network or anything like that, you gotta dive in, because it's really worth your time.
Heavy recommend.
Absolutely. I have a similar review of it as well. It was one of the best games I've played. And for me, the story was great, but it was just you being in the wild. There were so many just unique experiences, from climbing the tall neck, which is a supersized giraffe, seeing the lay of the land, to even entering a new open cavern and seeing a thunderjaw walking in the distance and going, there's no way I'm even looking at that thing, because if it sees me, it's over. So there's so many new experiences I had in this game that I didn't have in any others. And the vastness of it, the communication, I don't know if we even touched on it. You can have a positive, negative, or an in-between response to some dialogue, and that has repercussions down the line. There were so many small mechanics added in that I absolutely adored it, and I'm glad I actually played this before Breath of the Wild, because I to be honest, I like it more than Breath of the Wild. And that's my new controversial opinion.
Well, let's not talk crazy.
Exactly. That's my controversial opinion. Horizon Zero Dawn is better for me.
One of the things that you guys I think, Andy, you had mentioned this, setting up traps. I could not figure out how to use any of the traps effectively. I never did. I used a lot of the tripwires.
Yeah, that's traps.
And setting those up everywhere. Yeah. Well, I mean, there are literal traps in the game as items that you can place around. And I remember setting up a bunch and none of them going off.
Yeah, that sucks.
And thinking okay, well, I just can't figure out how to use this, so I'll never waste this again. But yeah, there's so many bits of this game that we could get into. That whether your responses are from the heart with your head or fiercely fighting, how the cauldrons come in and how many of those you went to tackle, and what your upgrade path was. I think we could probably talk for days on the different ways that we ultimately did those. But yeah, honestly a fantastic game. I paid full price for it. I'm glad that I did. I'm excited that I got to play through it. There's still chunks of the map that are unexplored for me, and who knows, I might go back and do that just to see what I haven't experienced yet.
Cool.
Totally. Fellas, it's been a pleasure talking about Horizon Zero Dawn with you. Maybe I'll give you some time, Andy. Anything else you want to tell the crew? Let them know where you are online.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. And if you enjoyed listening to me talk about the lore of video game, this is I should really thank you guys, because this is a real great advertisement for the stuff I do on VGS. Completely monopolize and go in depth on the lore of video games. So if you are interested in that, if I'm about to start a series mayhaps on Elden Ring and the lore there, which is confusing as hell, but head to VGS, Video Game Sophistry, on YouTube, and you'll have my show, and I'll be a pleasure to have you there. Thank you guys again for having me on.
Thank you for coming. Awesome. So yeah, that's our show today. If you haven't followed us, we are on all the social media platforms. So follow us on Twitter at Left Behind Game Club, on Instagram at Left Behind Game Club, and also on Discord, which can be found on our website. That's leftbehindgame.club/Discord. When you hit that URL, it'll send you directly to our server where you can come chat with everyone in our community, learn about some deals, about the games that are coming up. We have some channels now also for Elden Ring, for Horizon Zero Dawn, Life is Strange series, and we would like to talk about everything. And you can find me on almost all social media platforms at mmertati. Mike, where can the fine folks find you?
The fine folks can find me on many places online, or most social places online, at RuffaloM, or michaelruffalo.com or .ca, because you got to lock down both of those. But yeah, also in my free time, when I have that, it seems like it's fleeting these days, in the Discord server, where talk with people about great deals, cool games, hot takes. That's kind of our jam. But Mo, if that's all for this episode, shall I close us out?
Let me do the one last thing. Also, if you enjoyed the show, do us 2 favors. If you could, send the podcast to a friend. We'd love to kind of get this community growing as well. And if you are have us on iTunes, please leave us a 5-star review. That's the best way to kind of help this podcast. Mike,
please do.
What do we tell them?
And that, my friends, is one less game left behind.
Hey, I'm Jacob McCord.
I'm Katie Lesbrance.
And I'm Travis Colnut.
We are hosting a brand new podcast called Cutscenes.
There are tons of video game podcasts and tons of TV film podcasts, but we're going to bring you the intersection of both and talk about video game, movies, and TV.
I know what you're thinking. Aren't most of them not very good? Wrong. Some of them are fine. And we're going to tell you all about them.
Make sure to subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice. Follow us on Twitter at cutscenes_pod. And most importantly, give us a listen.
See you soon.
Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast.